Hi, I'm Erin Vatland. I'll be conducting your interview today. Um, is everything working all right? Did the Zoom and everything work fine?
Yes, thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Um, do you have any questions before we start about the organization? I'm about to go over the organization, but do you have any other questions besides that?
I don't think so. I'll let you know if I have any after you tell me more about the organization.
Okay, so the interview it's going to be about 10 questions, and the questions are going to go from general, just basic questions, to more specific skill set for the specific job. So, with that being said, we'll begin off with the basics. Just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a Franklin College graduate and I majored in quantitative analysis and I also minored in English and history. I love learning, if you couldn't tell by all the different subjects I decided to study. And pretty much, I love learning whatever I can, especially if it means that I get to help others.
That's good. With that being said, what's your greatest strengths and what are your greatest weaknesses, would you say?
So, my greatest strengths is that I'm really good with working with other people in groups that I've worked with. I usually can pretty easily get through any conflicts that we have, if there are any, and we can work together really well and meet our goal and plan ahead. I'm really good at organizing my schedule so that I can get stuff done on time because I just don't like waiting until the last minute. And I Another one of my greatest strengths is that I'm I'm really good at making sure that other teammates, if I'm working with them or if I'm working by myself, and me just staying on track so that we don't waste any time. That way the whatever project or whatever work needs to be done, it can be done to the best of my ability or my teammates' ability. And
So, what do you say your greatest weaknesses are?
so my greatest weaknesses are luckily something I've been able to identify and I've been able to work on them so that they're not as weak as they have been. But one thing is, especially when I'm working with teams of people that I've never met before, it does take a little while for me to get completely comfortable around them and be able to think more on the same wavelength and just be able to kind of understand the my different teammates' weaknesses and strengths to figure out how we can work really smoothly together, but I've been able to identify that and kind of open up more to my teammates and be more responsive. So that's been a lot less of a weakness recently, luckily. And another one is that sometimes I get really stressed, which sometimes can cause unnecessary um, time that I can't get back that kind of hinders my work. But on recent projects that I've done, especially in school, I've been able to address that and plan ahead so that I've planned that kind of in my time so that I stay ahead of schedule and what I know is going to happen won't impact me or my teammates or my project.
Okay. Um, well, with that being said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you have same with the same company? Do you want to go somewhere else? Try something else? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So this job is actually my dream job and what I've really wanted to do, and I've heard that there's a lot of different opportunities within this company. So I'd really like to stay with this company and see where I can go. I might wanna move out of state and possibly move to a different city that I've been wanting to move to and work within the same company and just kinda see where I can go and what I find to be my favorite thing, because I've heard so many different departments about this company and where you can go and all that you can do, and I just wanna see what I like and what works, because I don't think there's anything I wouldn't like.
Good. Glad to hear. Um, why did you want to work for this company specifically?
So I've heard a lot about this company pretty much my whole life, and the values and the work ethic of the employees really struck me as something that I admire. And if I could be a part of this company and on the teams, it would really mean a lot to me because you all help people while also being able to be in an environment where you are encouraged to thrive, you're encouraged to learn. And uh that sounds like a culture that would help me and everyone else around me and the company thrive and just become better people so that we can help people better and also help the company at the same time.
Nice. So with COVID has come having to work remotely and hybrid. So tell me about your experiences you have working in a hybrid or remote environment.
So, when COVID first hit, I did work in a remote environment and it took a little bit of time to get used to, but not as long as I thought it would. There was my French class that I had to work with, and me and my friend shared a book, and we were in different states. I was in Texas over COVID, and she was in Indiana. So it took a little bit of coordination for us to get the right pages of the book that we needed for the correct chapters. And sometimes we'd study together, which would help over Zoom. But um, we were able to get that to work even if there were some delays. And then there were classes that I had to do group projects and presentations on over Zoom when we were when we were fully online, and we were able to figure out our schedules, especially with the time difference, and kind of figure out what would work best for us. So, although there were kind of difficult times at first, once we got into the hang of what we needed to do and how we work online and how we know we react to being online all the time, it did help us figure out how to work best. And then with hybrid, I did have a lot of school projects with that too. Luckily, we were on campus at the time, so if we did have group projects and stuff we needed to work on, I could meet with my teammates in the library or somewhere else on campus and we can get that done. And when there were presentations in class, especially when they were during a online class, we were able to kind of coordinate and practice beforehand and kind of communicate what we needed to do and what our expectations were for everyone else and hints of, hey, you need to do this at this time, or when I say this, then you go, so that way we don't cut each other off or repeat stuff that doesn't need to be repeated.
So you've been talking about throughout your answers how you worked on teams and specifically, do you have any specific experiences working in teams? Could you describe those to me?
Yes. So one of the teams that I worked on was for graduation. Well, one of the classes we had to take for graduation was um, a senior seminar for the math department, and we had this exam that we had to take that was about 10 questions long, and we worked in groups within the class. And my group, we had, I worked with two other people, and we got together multiple times. We had 2 weeks to do this, so we were able to meet up 3 or 4 times. And one of the first things we did was go through what we needed to do, what we expected everyone else to do, and how we wanted to break up the work. And with this being an exam for how we graduate, we wanted to make sure that we worked on all the problems together. That way, one wouldn't be in charge of one, and then they get that wrong, and then we all would suffer for it. So we kind of worked everything together, but in between meeting up, we had different um, we had different assignments that we kind of gave ourselves. For example, I might go over one question and kind of frame out how I think we could work on it. One of the questions was a proof that we had to write up, And I just kind of went through the basics of how I think that would go. And then when we met with the other group members, I kind of explained my thought process. And then if they thought the same thing, great, we agreed. If not, we'd talk through it and figure out where we found our differences. And we all kind of worked together as a team to figure out where we wanted to go and what was our best answer that we could come up with. And then there was another group project for one of my computing classes where we had to create a game with code, and we all met a lot because we didn't get too much time to work on this um, computing project. We did have class time to work on it though, and we went a lot of times just through the steps that we imagined for the code, and then we worked on actually writing it, and there was a lot of communication back and forth of, "This is what I came up with, this is what I came up with," and how what we came up with was the same, how it was different, and how everything worked together so that we could make it as smooth as possible. And it ended up working out really well because we had a game that we actually enjoyed playing, even though it was a pretty simple one because it was a beginner computing class.
I'm glad to hear. So you've also talked about this a lot, is that you're an organized person and that you're great at staying organized. So what are some of the specific ways that you stay organized and help yourself stay on track?
So, what I do when I first get a project or at the beginning of the semester is I take a planner and I plan everything out so I can see the times where I can tell that I'm going to be stressed from projects and when I'm not. That way, once I get a project and figure out everything that I need to do and just more detailed information about it, I can go ahead and have an idea of, hey, I'm going to have a whole lot of time to work on this, or I'm not going to have a whole lot of time, just so I can see how much effort I'm going to have to put into making it fit into my schedule. And so if there's a lot of time, I might block out time to a couple days at first to kind of think about the project and how I'm going to progress. And then once I kind of figure that out, I can plan out, hey, I think it's going to take me a couple days to get this part of the project done. It's going to take me a couple days to get this part done. So what I would do is I'd go ahead and plan out that much. And then at the very end, because as I mentioned earlier, sometimes I do get stressed out, I'll plan out extra time that like a couple days of time where I can just go over everything I've done. That way, if I do get stressed out or something happens, I'm not going to be behind and I'll have that extra time to tweak some things and make sure it's okay. And if not, then I'll just be able to go through to just to make sure I have everything perfect in the way I want it. That way, I don't have to work on rushing anything or being late because ever since I've started doing this process and staying organized and writing out what I need to do when I need to do it, I've stayed ahead of the game and I've been able to turn in my best work possible.
So this you talking about stress leads in the next question. It's how do you handle stress in your deadlines? And do you have any specific examples of like stressing out near a deadline and how you were able to overcome that to make the best product you possibly could?
Yes. So the last semester that I had at school, I had this big paper due and I was stressed out because I was thinking, this is the last big paper and I've had this professor for years and she really wants all of her students to thrive and learn the best, but she also has really high expectations. And I was kind of worried. I mean, even though I had done all the steps and all the planning and put my heart and soul into this paper, I was still kind of nervous, is it going to be okay? Is she going to like it? Am I going to be able to show her everything that I've learned and kind of show how much I've grown and how much I've taken to heart everything she's taught us? Because she's given us a lot of good information and I want to show her that yes, I can do this and this is exactly how it's going to help me in the future. And so that kind of stressed me out and I got through writing the paper on time, but then once the stress kind of started hitting, I would go through every minute detail on the paper and just stress and go, "Oh, is this too much? Is this not enough?" But eventually, I was able to kind of calm myself down, take a couple of quick breaths, and think, "Okay, you've done everything that you recommended. You've done all of the steps. You've done everything that you've needed to do and everything that has made you successful in the past." So I took a little, like, half an hour break to kind of clear my head. Then I opened the paper back up and I was able to think a bit more clearly. And so once I went through that and got everything done, then the last day before the paper was due, I was able to think more clearly and just kind of understand, okay, this is what I actually need to do to fix this paper. And this is just what stress is saying that I need to do, even though it's just stress and I don't really need to fix it. So it just taking a couple deep breaths, making sure that I have enough time, that has helped me so much with keeping up with stress, making sure that it doesn't hinder any progress or any success.
So earlier you've talked about working groups, and with working in groups comes communication. So how would you describe your communication style with others?
So my communication style is it's kind of soft, but it's kind of direct. So when I'm going through expectations and at the beginning of the project thinking, "Hey, this is what I need to do. This is, what needs to happen." I'll be soft and I'll kind of tell them what I expect, but I don't want to I don't want to make them feel like I'm asking too much or I'm demanding this of them because in the end we're teammates and I want to be able to work together and I don't want anyone to feel bad or just feel like I'm controlling the group because we're all supposed to be working together. So I'll let them know exactly what needs to be done, but I'll kind of not sugarcoat it, but I'll just kind of coat it with being nice and just making sure that everyone knows what needs to happen, but also letting them know, hey, if something comes up or if they need to talk about changing expectations or something, if something comes up, that I'm more than willing to work with them. And in the end, since it is a group project and we've all got our own lives and everything, that we can make things work as long as we communicate. Because I don't want people to be scared of coming and saying something if they need to talk.
So with communicating, are you more of a will communicate online, like through email or text, or are you more of a go in person and speak to them that way?
So, what I'd prefer is I'd prefer to speak with someone face to face just so I can kind of cater the conversation to how they're feeling and just make sure that we're on the same page. But through a lot of my projects, especially with COVID hitting in the middle of my college experience, I am more than comfortable communicating over email or text messages because I have done that with a ton of group projects.
So getting into really specific to this job, have you ever used any software, specifically Microsoft Excel or anything like that? And can you give me any examples of you using that software?
Yes, so specifically with Microsoft Excel for my calculus classes, there was one professor who liked to make sure that we knew how what we were learning in class directly related to the outside world and how we might use it in our careers. So he'd have throughout different sections of the class different like mini projects that we would have to work on. So I remember there was one that we got about the prison system in the county that the school is in, and he'd give us data about different years, and we'd be expected to use what we learned to make predictions about what needs to be done, but he'd also make sure that we'd use the numbers to not just say, "Hey, this is what the numbers tell us," but also made us translate it into how if you were just talking to someone, how would you tell this to someone who doesn't really know the material that we're talking about and the different ways that we get it? How can you do this? And especially, he made us use typing in a lot of charts into Excel, but also a lot of graphs. And used we also used Microsoft Word in connection with that so that we could kind of show, hey, this is what is in Excel to show you and all the graphs that we have, and this is what we have to write out. And then there was another project that I did this past semester with I had a partner for this project, and we worked with a domestic violence center, and they wanted us to update their domestic violence or stated domestic violence yearly report. And so we had to work with them, and they were like an hour away, so it was really a lot of emailing and a lot of Zoom calls with them. But we had to use a lot of Excel because they had data from the past 3 years that was all in an Excel sheet, but things weren't uniform. Like, sometimes they had this information and the next 2 years didn't have that information, so we had to kinda look through and go through everything, figure out what was the same, what was different, if it was just worded differently, and put it all into a uniform Excel sheet. And once we were done with that, I think we had an Excel workbook with 20 different sheets that we had with variations of different graphs and different charts and how everything related, and then we all put it into a Word document for them, just laying out all the information and writing a little report of how it can be fixed or what the information meant. And then there was another project that I did last fall, and we took a company, so my group, we did GAAP, and we had to go through all of their financial statements and all their financial information that they put online for their 10K and go through that. And for every unit in that class, we had different parts of the project that related to what we were learning. And so we had to go through all the financial information, go through Yahoo Finance, find everything, put it in a giant Excel sheet, and then we had a Word document that wrote out everything so that you could either read the Excel sheet and get the information that way or go through the workbook that we had for the Microsoft Word and just read through and get the same information.
So with the domestic violence one, did you guys work directly with with the people themselves, or was it just like a project away from the group?
So with the domestic violence report, there were two directors. I have their cards actually right next to me. Um, so we worked with a foundations officer and an administration coordinator, and they kind of told us what they wanted. The first day that we met with them, we actually went to the domestic violence shelter, and they kind of gave us a tour so that when we got all the numbers and we understood what they were asking for us, how we can see how it relates. So if we see something, for example, one of the things that we had to go through was how many people use the shelter. They had different programs, and we got to see, okay, if we have this many people here, this is how many people we see it was housed. Did that line up? Um, and there was a lot of communication back and forth with those two administrators and me and the other person that I worked with in that class, because that class had different groups, but different people worked on different projects. Like, one group worked with the library, another worked with a company based in Indianapolis that wanted just to get their data for how much their products are used. And so me and my partner worked together twice a week, once or twice a week, got together, we went through everything, figure out what we needed to do, and then if we had any questions or we had any updates that we needed to give the um administrators that we were talking with through the domestic violence shelter, we just email them and kind of gear our communication and our meetings towards what we needed to do at the time, because we also had to communicate with different people in the community, like different police officers, different hospitals, um, different organizations that they work with. And so we were working directly with the domestic violence shelter, but we were also having to work on the side with the school because we had different requirements that we had to get for the class, but we also had to work with different people outside of that.
Wow, I'm really impressed. With that, concludes the interview. And before we sign off, do you have any questions or anything else you'd like to share?
I was wondering, what's your favorite part about working with this company?
Kind of like how you said, they're great values. They're great, specifically working with women. They and has, as y'all said, great work ethic. They make everyone wants to be there and everyone wants to work hard. And I do think that's a great way for a company to run.
And
So I'm really impressed with the interview, and I'd like to thank you for being here and giving us some of your time.
well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to interview me. It means a lot.
It's my pleasure. So thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, you too.